Welcome to part 2 of the Microsoft Lists on Demand training workshop. Here is truly where we're going to go further with Microsoft Lists to show you how you can make lists work for you. We're going to talk about customizing your list, customizing the forms, working with rules, and the value that the Power Platform plays into giving you the tools that you need to build exactly the solution that you require. My name is Mark Cashman, and I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Microsoft on the Microsoft List product team with a history on the SharePoint marketing team. So everything we've done with List in the past, SharePoint List, moves forward as you learned in part 1. Now we call it Microsoft List as a part of that evolution, but we've got a lot to share and show in this particular part 2, and I can't wait to show you everything that you can do with lists. In this second module, we're going to focus on how you can customize your list with views, formatting, and rules. We'll talk about the value of Microsoft Lists with integrations with the Power Platform, and then we'll talk about roadmap, resources, and some additional Q&A for those particular use cases around how you can roll out and adopt at scale. Just as a refresher, if you didn't see Module 1 or Part 1, we really focused on creating and collaborating, getting started with your list, using the out-of-box Microsoft ready-made templates, and working with lists inside of Microsoft Teams. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go to Part 1, get the basics of what Microsoft Lists is and what they mean in Microsoft Teams. But with this going forward in Part 2, we're really going to drill into using them and making them work for how you want to track information. If you think about making a list work for you, we have a lot of capabilities with inside the list product to give you ways to configure and build out views for how people can consume your list. And of course, you can create those lists for different ways of viewing subsets of information within the same list or presenting it to a variety of different people. Maybe for an executive review, you have one view. For a team working meeting, you might have a different view, filling out different pieces of information. You can leverage a lot of the capabilities on how you can group and filter different items. And of course, it's dependent on how you list and label individual items. But once you group and filter, you'll see that the list comes alive to show you just what you're looking for. There's a lot of value and power in working with row and column formatting, and I'll show you that even from a conditional perspective. So when certain criteria is met, colors change, and it really brings to attention visually something that's going on in the list. We'll cover how to work with rules. Rules are new as far as Microsoft Lists, and you'll see how it's building out like a sentence structure, like if this, then that type structure, but it really is like writing out a sentence based on the structure of your list. When you use and customize views, there are 3 that we make available. On the left-hand side, you'll see them listed out. We have calendar view, which you can easily create. You can leverage grid, which is the most common view. That's that center graphic. Or a gallery view, which really looks great when you have an image column or an image associated to an individual list item. No matter what, you can start with these out of the box, or you can configure and customize your view based on how you want to represent and present your material. That might be based on conditional formatting or coloring different rows or different columns. You can show and hide different fields in different rows or columns, and you can create different custom headers and footers for the forms when people actually go and click into a list item. So we will see this all in demo, but think about this as these are the ways that you can pivot and customize your views so that they work for you and, of course, work across the entire team for different ways that different people might be consuming that same list of information. When we get into the actual customizing of the list, there's a really interesting way to work with your list data in a fast and bulk fashion. We used to call this quick edit, and I still list it here because some people still think of it as quick edit, but I'll be real clear in demo that there is now a button that is mostly fully rolled out into production that's called Edit in Grid View. But in essence, you're able to edit across your list in a fast and performant way, especially when you're wanting to bulk multiple list items. Adding additional color and conditional formatting is very easy, and I'll show you how to do that when it comes to basing it off of the actual list data. We'll build out a couple of rules so that helps how you can see how that notifies and brings others in to keep them informed. And I'll show you how I am not a JSON or a developer, but I can copy paste from samples and really bring lists to life in ways that work for me based on the work of the community and based on even samples that Microsoft provides. But there are ways to customize forms, the header, the body, and the footer, and I will show you all that when we get to demo. So again, it is great to hear about it, but it's even better to see it in action. For this next set of demos, I'm going to show you how to use and create views, how to balance how you make the list come alive with column and row formatting. We'll get into configuring and customizing forms and how to work with rules. So with that, stop talking, more to see. So for this final module, I'll be real clear on how you can make lists work for you. There's a lot of ways to get started, work with others. When it comes to having the list work for you, visually or in the sense of notifications, I want to take you on that journey of being able to configure your lists exactly how you want and need them to be. So to do that, I'm going to jump into the devices list here and just walk you through the different ways that you can leverage views or create your own custom views. The one that I've set as the default when you land into this list is the gallery view, and you saw that a little bit earlier. But here I can have, whether I have images or not, I can go in and make this view look like a card layout. And I can take it even further if I want to configure this, and I'll show you how it does it on the back end. And you'll see some of the choices I can make if I don't want to show the image in this particular view. I don't have to, but I think it looks nice. And I can choose the order of where things land or just what visually helps me. So I know that I want maybe the asset and the model to appear over the image. And you'll see how it starts to adjust here in real time. And because this is a list I'm pretty familiar with, and I know the people on my team members are familiar with, I might not need the column names as labels. That's where you see asset type, model, checked out. If we know what that all stands for, it just makes it so I can see a little bit more. And at some point, I feel like this is a good card layout for this gallery view. I'll click Save. And now when I come to this list, this is the view that I get. I, of course, have the ability to go to the row and column view. We call that grid view. And I'll walk through how I configured what you see here visually. But from a view perspective, by default, we have grid view, we've got gallery view, and then there's one other view that I want to show you, which I have already configured here in a previous demo. But I want to show you when you want to use the calendar view, you actually have to create a view that's going to ask you, what do you want to name it? So we'll call this calendar. And we'll choose show as a calendar, which means it'll look like a calendar visually. And I want to choose what the date that represents where this list shows up on the calendar. And I'll just leave it as this purchase date, which you can see here is the date column that we have in the list itself. You can also do interesting things based on tracking issues or managing different task-oriented lists. You can go in and look at when things were created, when things were modified, of actual when the list item was created. But this would be a specific date that I chose. I can make this a public view, which I think is helpful for other people that like to see things visually on a calendar. And this is where I can choose what do I want to appear as the single item when you see it in the calendar view. And I'll explain what that means when I show you. But essentially, it's going to pull in the title column, which is this number. But I actually want to pull it out and show you where it's just different. I can actually have it be who it's checked out to. So I'll click Create. And this is just going to generate a new view. So I need to go back a few months so you can see a couple of these list items. And now you see that these items are represented with the person's name. That was the choice I made. And as I click into it from calendar, overlaid, I get the nice full details. When I'm done, I'm back into my calendar view and I can navigate month to month and see where all these items appear. But again, this is just a view of information. It's the same list. I can view all items. I can see them as a list, and I can easily work with and navigate down. The one thing I want to show you last from a views perspective is I can set up how I want to visualize this. So maybe I want to group by status, and I want to filter down so that I'm only seeing everything but retired. So when I click apply, it's essentially taking one category away. So I see available, in repair, in use. And this is a helpful way to visualize this particular group of assets so that I can see what's available, what's in repair, what's in use, and it's broken up that way by group. If you notice up here in all items, you get a little asterisk, which means I've changed the view. And I actually want to save this view, not as all items, but as grouped for my visual use case. And you just name it whatever you want. I can make it a public or a private view. Click Save. And now anytime I come back to this list, I can navigate between all of the existing views, whether they were there by default, like the grid view or gallery view, or like the calendar views that I created, or this particular very custom view. And now it's just easy for me to navigate from view to view to view. Now, if I go back to all items and I view this back as a list, I want to describe a little bit of what I've done with some of the formatting here. And so I'll go into the model column and show you how you can adjust column formatting. If I go into column settings, format this column, you'll see that I've set, based on model, a conditional formatting. So if I go into manage rules, you can see the choices that I've made. If the status of this model, that's this column, status, is equal to retired, then I want the text to be red, crossed out with this X icon. And that's a choice that I can make. If I want the status equal to in use, you see that it's this blue sample that's represented here, but I want some more to happen to that. So if I want to show you how to do some of that configuration, let's say that from being in use, I want that to be more gray instead of blue. I want it to be something that's a little bit larger, bolded, and I want it to be something that's maybe trending in the up to show that it's in use. I can do a lot more with borders and border colors, but this looks good to me, and it's just a slight update for how I want to track this information. If I back it up a little bit, we've been looking at it from an individual column perspective, but if you click over into Format View, based on the list itself, I'm going to click in here to Manage Rules and the conditional formatting for the entire set of rows. If I chose up here to alternate the style row for row, it would just do that based on the color scheme that I chose. But I want to show you how you can add additional logic. So already in here, I have the ability to configure if the status equals to retired, then I want the whole row to be yellow. If I want to go in and add in a different rule, and I want to say if the status is equal to, and in this case, available, then I actually want it to be this color green. And I can choose it, for it to be a little darker green or whatever works for me. So now as I go in and I can see that the column formatting is here for the items listed as retired, but with additional logic from a formatting perspective, when I choose retired, it shows up as a yellow row. When it's available, I choose it as green. And just to show you this in action, if we look at this mouse with associated to Ligoo, if I click into that and I change the status of in repair to available, you'll see that the white background of the row should become green when it saves. And it just automatically picks up the status, but then adjusts to the logic that I've put in the context of how you can colorize and help formatting guide your eye to what it is that's trying to tell you. So we've seen forms a couple of times. I'm going to talk a little bit more on how you can configure the forms to move beyond the list itself to then help how people can consume the particular form. So if I go in and in the upper right, you'll see you have three options. I can edit the columns. If I do that, it really is a simple way to show or hide different attributes that appear on the form. So if you notice where it says price, maybe for now that's not important anymore. We want to keep the information, but we don't need it to be on the form. So I'll uncheck it, click save, and then the price goes away. That's an easy way to edit and manage your form. You can also move items up or down. If I want to get into a little bit more refined ways of configuring the header, the way that the body is laid out, or the footer information, I'll show you what I've already done is I went in and I configured the layout and I leveraged what's called JSON in the header, the body, and the footer. And I'll just show you the example here with the header. I went in and what it's doing is it's using the JSON code that's one of our samples and it adds this icon. It pulls out this word that I want to highlight in front of it, and then I programmed to then be filled out with the title or what is now called the asset tag. So it just has a different way of pulling up information so I can see a little bit more visually what this list item is. It also then pulls in the way that the footer appears, and you'll see where it says learn more about Microsoft Lists. If I go into the footer, this particular sample is a little bit more of a simple set of JSON, but if you notice what shows up here, learn more about Microsoft Lists EMEA. This is from my previous demo. I'll just put in workshop. And this time I'm going to leave our URL, but if you notice here, this is the actual H reference to that URL. No surprise that it's creating a hyperlink. When I click preview, you'll see that the word changes to workshop. When I click save, now I have everything that I wanted out of this form. When I click into it, you'll see that I've got custom header, custom footer, and still all of that nice formatting intact. To help me get through understanding this information, forms are a big part of that on how people create the original new item and how they can see when things change, that it comes through here, especially with your custom elements. There's also further ways where you can go and further customize with Power Apps, and we'll have that information in a link. So the last thing that I want to show you is rules. There's a lot of rules that I've built into when things change in how the list looks. That's a lot of the format. But if I go into Automate and click on Create a Rule, this is going to help me manage this list in a way that myself or other people get notified. So if I go in, and one example of our rules templates is a column value changes and I want some notification to be sent. So if I go in and choose a column, we'll kind of stick with the status. When the status is equal to, and let's say retired, that might be a work item for somebody that needs to then take that asset. If it's a physical, like a laptop, you might remove the hard drive before you send it up to be recycled. So if this device is set at retired, then you can choose who do you want to have this sent to. I might be creating this rule for me because I am that device management expert. So I can click on me and it knows who I am because I'm signed in, and it knows what my email address is. So that's great. I can click create, and now anytime a list item meets that rule, then I will get notified. But there's of course ways to configure other rules, and other people in the team might create their own rules on behalf of the whole team or just on behalf of themselves. But if I go in here and I'll just go into that same one, if I want to change this at any time, maybe I started to actually track the individual who owns or is responsible for that device, and I can go in here and have that be based on who created that list item, and then they'll get the emails about when the status is retired for that item. If I don't need this rule anymore, I can do two things. I can just turn it off. Maybe it's seasonal, where I don't necessarily need this running until we have a lot of activity. Or if I don't need it anymore, whether it's on or off, I can go in and delete the rule. Either way, what I'm really trying to do is help my list, help myself and other people by creating notifications, a different way of drawing people in based on when things change on your list. So just to summarize, there's a ton that you can do with views. Some you get out of the box, some of the things you can do in a custom fashion, leveraging that gallery view, leveraging the calendar view, or just organize it in a way that is a view that makes sense to you. You can layer on a ton of visual intelligence with color formatting for rows and columns, and you can have that based on different conditions. You can customize your forms, so you can change the layout of what the information, how you either input items or review items, or some things you minimize where maybe you want to take them out of view from a form perspective. And then to keep it all rowing in the same direction, leveraging rules to notify people, to grab their attention, to adjust things as things change. So as a recap, we have a simple video that is just that. It is a recap of a lot of what I showed you in demo. It's also a tool that we hope that you use if you have the need to show this and give your own demo to your own peers. This is a quick way without having to require you to set up the environment for the demo. But it's also just a reminder of what we just saw. You can go in and use the different alternate row formatting. You can add conditional formatting like you saw how we started. You can go in and configure this to your heart's content to make it work for you. At the individual column formatting level, we'll do this on the days old column. We're actually going to add a specific rule so that the numbers show up in a certain way if the status is equal to either completed, 30 days, or even longer. Working with rules, this gives you a quick reminder of leveraging the templates, and then, as I mentioned, you can build out a rule just like you're building out a sentence. When the status is won't be fixed, send an email to the person that's assigned. There's a lot of flexibility you saw in the demo with rules, and this is just a quick reminder of how to build them, and in this case, how to manage them. So the last thing that is here for review is when you click into an individual item, you can simply adjust the form that then appears. If you notice all the columns that are showing on the left, if I add days old, you'll see it appear as now showing on the form. So you can do lightweight customization in the form, or as you saw me demo, you can take it even further and further customize it. We think this is a really easy way to share with others. We hope it's a useful tool to have as a train the trainer approach, or use it as a quick refresher for everything that I just showed you in that last demo section. Let's turn our head to really that scenario where you think of, gosh, I actually need more power for some of my lists. And we've done a lot of integration work with the Power Platform. The Power Platform gives us 3 primary tools that we have integrations with and have had for a while with Power Apps and Power Automate. But to be real clear, we leverage the Power Platform to help customize forms even further, especially when you want to bring in additional external source and data. You can also work with Power Automate to design more complex workflows. And we're just starting to release the ability to visualize your list and analyze it in Power BI. And I will show you all of this from a view perspective, but just know that there's a lot that the teams do to enable you to get this entire spectrum or this full continuum of solutions. So on the left-hand side, we like to call this native efficiency. What can I do with just lists alone? And that might be a need for a lot of your list. To track quickly, I need to work with others, and I just get what I get out of the ready-made templates or with lightweight configuration. If I move into the middle section, I might have some scenarios or uses for lists where I need to add a little bit more conditional formatting so that when something changes, I get a notification or it triggers somebody to go into action. Or I just want the look and feel to be a little bit more in depth to help me visualize what's going on with this information. And on the right-hand side, which this particular part of our part 2 is focused on, is the integrated solutions we have to give you a greater set of tools to build out higher-end customizations, or what a lot of people refer to as business solutions. So that is working with Power Apps, Power Automate, and working with the Power BI. All that we get the value from the Power Platform, where at that point it leverages the list as the back-end data source. So think about Power Apps as a great way to extend your list forms even further, especially when it comes to either visually how you want to represent it on the form, or being able to bring in additional sources of data and represent them side by side in the context of the list data plus additional data maybe coming from an HR system or a line of business system. With Power Automate, you might have that deeper level of requirement where it is not just a notification based on the change of a status, but it might be where you might want to trigger a review and approval scenario, or you might want to have it where Power Automate actually goes and grabs information from a third-party source and brings it back to update the list itself. There's a lot that you can do with Power Automate, and it just leverages list as the data source as you go through that workflow that's mapped to your business process. And with visualizing your data, you can leverage Power BI. Same as you would go to a list, select from the Integrate menu, choosing Power BI will take all of that list data intact and help you visualize to once it's loaded up in Power BI that gives you the tools to then analyze your data. This is great if you think about one scenario, if you're managing a broader event, an internal campaign, or a broader set of materials. Opening it up into Power BI gives you the way to analyze which session did well. Collectively, how did we do across these different session types that we had? And you can drill in and see exactly how things performed based on the information that you manage in the list. So to get a little bit more granular, I'm just going to step through 2 screenshots per each of these apps. This is Lists plus Power Apps. If I want to customize my form, I can just go into the form you see here on the right-hand side and click Customize with Power Apps. What that will get me is it'll bring me into the Power Apps Designer, which, to be frank, is a different skill set than what we're providing here in this workshop. But there's a ton of material, and we'll have it linked so you can go learn more on how to leverage Power Apps with lists, specifically a deeper, richer look at actually how to do it. But in essence, you're configuring the form. You can make it wider. You can, of course, adjust the design of it. You can adjust some of the logic that's in the form based on what gets filled out or not. Again, taking you to that next level of what you need from your list and what you need from an input or a review of information from a form. Next, if we take that same lens, go into the Integrate menu. When you click into it, you'll see this first experience on the right to create a flow. There's a lot of out-of-box flows that are available, the ones that work with lists and Power Automate. And if you go to see more or show more, you'll see the list goes on and on. Once you commit to using one, or one that will at least give you a great starting point, you go into the Power Automate Designer, and here you'll see either what the template gives you or the ability to go in and build your own custom actions and custom logic based on what it is that you want this flow to do. Could be as simple as review and approve through multiple chains of hierarchy, or it could be something that in parallel you're going out and reaching into other systems, bringing information in. Here in the Power Automate Designer is where you would actually build out the workflow and the logic in either sequentially or in parallel. Again, both of these are a different skill set. I encourage you, there's a ton of information on how to leverage and work with Power Automate, and List is one of their first tier 1 sources of data. So a lot more information to learn here, but just think of the value of when you have a highly custom business process that you need to track your information with, you can accomplish that using Power Automate. And last is a view with List plus Power BI. For us, this is a new integration, but if you've leveraged Power BI before, you'll already know what you can do. But if not, it's a great place to jump into so that you can do further analysis on the data that's contained in your list. So again, back to the Integrate menu, click on Power BI, and then you click on Visualize this list. That takes you into an auto-generated dashboard that you can then configure and customize. And there's a lot of great examples that we have as this starts to roll out if you want to read the documentation, but it also just leverages Power BI. So if you already know how to use it, you can change the look and feel of a lot of the charts, highlight and change some of the information that is either there or not. And you can configure how that information is displayed as people start to click around. There's a lot that you can do to analyze your information. Again, the list just becomes the data source on the back end. Power BI then is a visualized tool to help you analyze what's going on, and so that you can click around and learn a lot more and then take that action that you need based on this data. So as a summary, there's a lot that you can do with lists in the Power Platform. List plus Power Apps comes in a lot of different ways throughout Microsoft 365. You can customize your list forms. We walked through that. You can also build off of a list a custom mobile application leveraging Power Apps. And it's a native integration that's already there, and leveraging the Power Apps mobile capability, you can build out even mobile applications using the list as the back-end data source. We also have a Power Apps web part. So again, if you're comfortable building out a Power App or already have, you can add that onto a SharePoint page or into a SharePoint home site. That gives you a lot of flexibility on how to present it to the broader community. And as you're collecting that information or presenting it, all of it is being managed on the back end in the list. The through point is that access point, which could even be an embedded Power App in a SharePoint intranet page. Looking at List plus Power Automate, a lot of these are focused on doing things that are simple, like setting a reminder and triggering things based on date columns. That review and approval or request for sign-off is a common workflow, and tying that to what you're tracking and managing in the list is very easy. We also see this as tied to different content or physical assets even around review and approval, or approving things to then be published out into the real world. And List plus Power BI, we're just getting started here. The most easy thing and the way to think about it is a way to visualize your information. Whether you're creating one dashboard per list or you create multiple dashboards per list. Think again, like I had mentioned before, it might be for an exec review. You build out a specific dashboard that helps carry that conversation. Or have it as a working tool for everybody that manages maybe an entire event or a whole fleet of trucks. Have that be, how many trucks do we have out for repair? How many trucks do we have available for next week, which we know is going to be a big week with the amount of deliveries that we have? You can drill into that information, analyze it with the dashboards that you create, and that integration that we provide, we hope is just one click away, no matter what you're trying to do with lists, to build out custom forms, to build out custom workflows, and to visualize or analyze your data on rich dashboards. If we take that all into consideration, I do want to spend a little time highlighting what we've announced and disclosed out to the public roadmap and recently at the Ignite conference. So what's in the column of available now, available soon is mostly in market, and it's a lot of what I showed you here today and in part one. This is Microsoft List, the product. These are the ways that we are now have in market for everybody worldwide. And I'd like to put it in context with what's available with all of the tools that are closely related, or like I mentioned in part one, part of the collaborative work management portfolio that Microsoft offers. So think in terms of innovations for SharePoint, Yammer, Stream, collectively give you the tools that you need for how you can manage teamwork, how you can manage documents, manage list information, and on that broader to the entire company perspective, how you can improve culture and communication. Lists, we think, play an integral part both for collaboration and employee engagement. And as you manage different lists and different list information, we want to provide you with a clear roadmap of where we're going to make that experience better. When you embed a list on a SharePoint page, we want to give you that better tools to be able to do that. If it's a calendar that you want to put on a page, at mentions and comments, again, helps with drawing people in specifically to a list item. Working with all of your lists offline is a big project for us, and that should be coming very soon in the middle of 2021. And we're focused on a better rich text experience. So I'm focused on the available column, and those things are rolling out very shortly if you're watching this in the June or July timeframe of 2021. But thinking about later this year, some of the exciting things that we're working on, I mentioned the Lists app for Android that's coming. We wanted to give you the ability to create custom list templates. We'll have even more capabilities coming into Microsoft Teams. We do have 2 admin controls that we've announced, the ability to turn on or off comments, and that could be at a per list level. And we have versioning on by default, but that might be something that you want to turn off for certain lists. And last was what I just walked through, the ability to visualize your list in Power BI. We publish these all to the Microsoft 365 public roadmap, and they are all available. Everything that's listed here also has a date associated to it that we do update if that date were to change. But if you go to aka.ms/mslist/ignite2021/blog, you'll see this all in kind of a full screenshot fidelity. And of course, if you go to the Microsoft 365 public roadmap, type in Microsoft List, you'll find everything that you need. One other resource that I want to highlight is our Microsoft Lists Adoption Center. So if you've been encouraged to take this information further to some of your peers, or you're in charge of rolling out lists at scale for your entire organization or in your enterprise or within your district if you're working broadly across multiple tenants in an education scenario, we have a lot of great getting started guides, an adoption playbook, email templates if you want to help roll out and copy paste those into your own email sends when you are ready to make it clear around what Microsoft Lists are, what the use cases are, and spread that as information across your organization. I hope this slide will give you what you get when you go to the Adoption Center, but I encourage you to go to aka.ms/listadoption. You'll see the Adoption Center, and you'll get hands-on all the material that you need, including the day in the life flyers, which I think sometimes are just helpful around what lists do for different personas, different departments, different scenarios. They're super easy to consume, 2 minutes per each day in the life of PDF document, and they're easy to share if you think they're relevant to people as they're tracking their processes or managing work streams or organizing information. We really try to highlight what is the role that different people play as they come in and out of leveraging Microsoft Lists. And again, with the List Adoption Center, we hope it makes it easy to share the knowledge around what Microsoft Lists are and how they might benefit you in your enterprise. One last set of information, and then I'll have a summary of resources, is there are additional session videos that we have available also on demand that will either be a repeat or a review. If you want to share in longer form, getting started with Microsoft Lists, we have a great session that my peer Lincoln and Bharat did, but also additional sessions for going deeper, organizing business information with Microsoft Lists. That was a great session that really gets into working with conditional formatting, working with forms, and taking those to the next level. That's with Michaela Barrett and Niket Jain. We also have a session if you're interested in just what is behind the scenes, what is the design that went into what Microsoft is in itself, the iconography, and how it works in Microsoft Teams so that it's a seamless experience for the end user experience. And some of our designers, Ben Truelove and Christopher Weimer, have a great session at what went behind the design principles and decisions that they made so that it was a great experience. The next one is pretty straightforward. Microsoft Lists loves Microsoft Teams, and there's a great session that really drills into how to do it and some of the paradigms that they used to make that experience inside of Teams. So Ansuman and Michael did a great session around Teams plus Lists. And finally, if you really are interested in taking it further with the Power Platform, my peer Chax did a great session on how to customize essentially productivity apps, leveraging lists on the back end with Power Apps and Power Automate. This was created before Power BI became available, but if you want to learn how to customize forms and how to work with workflow, Chax did a great session. So all of these AKA links will take you directly to a page with the video embedded, so you can learn more, especially if you want to share more about specific capabilities around lists. I hope this breaks it up a little bit in a longer form to give you what you need to either train yourself further or to share with others so they can get a little bit more deeper investments in how does Microsoft Lists work. Broadly speaking, the resources available to you, this is a short version of what's available, but there's specific information around how to administer the experience of lists in Teams. There's end user documentation through our support.microsoft.com efforts around Microsoft Lists. There's a lot of great new help documentation. There's a List Resource Center where you'll find all of our blogs, demos, videos, some specific podcasts that we've released. Just go to aka.ms/mslists. That's the great first point to go to learn about all of the assets that are available, especially if you're in that mode of, I want others to learn about Microsoft Lists. It's a great place to go. The List Adoption Center, again, is a great location when you think about rolling out at scale inside your organization. Go to the roadmap, learn all about what we are doing and when some of those things will be coming. We are publishing, on a monthly and quarterly basis, new information to the public roadmap. And last, a small plug around the Interzone. This is our podcast that we manage to get information on a yearly basis, on an ongoing basis, around Microsoft Lists and other technology that SharePoint, Teams, Yammer. We talk with people inside and outside of Microsoft to really have that ongoing flow of information out to you to learn more about what we're doing. And it's also a place where you can provide feedback. What do you want to hear about? We always want to be very top of mind with what we're releasing and top of mind with what you need. So if you have a topic, please don't hesitate to let us know what you'd like to hear next on the Interzone. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time here in part 2. Super appreciate it if you sat through and joined us for part 1 and part 2. A double clap for you. And we want to make sure that as you get to the close of this session, it's just a start to, we hope, what you're going to do with Microsoft Lists next. So thank you for your time. My name is Mark Cashman. If you have any questions, any comments, please feed them to us so we can make sure to give you what you need. And hopefully with this training, you have at least a great way to get started. So again, thank you for your time.